All right, we'll go ahead and get started now. Thank you so much for joining the webinar today. Just a few housekeeping things to start with. On the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a Handouts tab. If at any point you can download the presentation in PDF form and print it off if you'd like, or provide it to anyone else on your team. After the presentation, you will be emailed a recording. So if you want to rewatch certain portions, or if anybody from your team would also like to watch it, you will have a recording available. Brianna from my team is available on the call, and she will be watching the chat. So if anyone's having any technical difficulties, feel free to post in the chat, and she'll be able to assist you with that. As well as if you have any questions, we will do a Q&A session at the end, and she will collect the questions and then ask the questions at the end of the presentation. So we'll go ahead and get started now. I'm John Leutermann, president of Big Rock Marketing. I've been doing digital marketing for over 15 years. I work extensively in the community association management industry, have several clients in the industry. And so I understand what you guys are going through and understand what works and what doesn't work as far as attracting board members to your website. For the presentation today, just a real quick agenda. We're going to go over why does this matter? Why are we doing this presentation? Why this topic? Why is this important? The top Google business profile mistakes that I see. What is it that board members search for, and what do they see when they do searches for management companies? And then also tips and tricks to optimize your Google business profile. And then at the end, we will do question and answer session. So why do Google business profiles matter to community association management companies? Google profiles that are optimized can now account for up to 30% of your new business inquiries. So leads, community leads, they come directly through your Google business profile. And so some of the reasons for that is almost half of all Google searches right now are local, and CAM companies, for the most part, although there are some national companies, the majority of companies are hyper local businesses, and the visibility in your local market is what actually drives your community leads. 93% of all local searches right now show a Google business profile result. Now we do expect that to shift over time, but for now, right now, most local searches do have some sort of a Google business profile result included in them. So this is super visible, super important. The Google Business program is one of the free programs through Google, so it is definitely an important element. And the last item is that HOA board members will Google you first before calling or submitting a form on your website. And that is true of board members who are just doing a general Google search looking for a management company. And it's also true of referrals. I talk with a lot of management companies who are very lucky to get a lot of referrals, and that's how they've driven much of their business. But referrals are definitely Googling you and checking out your profile, checking out your website prior to giving you a call or submitting a form. So having a good presence on Google is super important. Google tries very hard to get searchers to not leave their website when they're doing a search. And so over the years, they have expanded Google business profiles to become basically mini websites. And that's great. I mean, we would prefer them to come to your website, but we sort of just have to play Google's game. And what's happened with many management companies is that years ago, they either directly themselves set up their profile or had somebody help them set up their profile and weren't aware of all these enhancements that occurred through the years. And so in almost every case, when I help a management company, their profiles are missing fields that were added that they never filled out, and they aren't taken advantage of. So that's what this webinar is here to educate you on. So some of the top mistakes that I see with management companies is number one is doing nothing with the profile. So The profile was set up years ago, and they just don't touch it, don't check it, just kind of let it sit there. Um, with many management companies, they don't know how to log in, they don't know who has the login, and so it's very common. I would encourage everyone on the call to make sure that multiple people within your organization do have a login, and especially executives, owners, president of the company. You want to make sure, in case an employee would happen to leave, that there is a second person that has a login to your profile. Um, the next, and this is probably the biggest item that I see when I'm optimizing profiles, is that the categories and services are missing. So categories have been around forever. Most people aren't using them correctly. We're going to go over that on this call today. And then the services section was added a few years ago. So the majority of profiles that I take a look at don't have the services section filled out, or only have a very limited number of services included. Many profiles don't have images or outdated logos or even incorrect hours. Reviews, we'll talk a little bit about reviews today as well. Many companies ignore the reviews or don't do anything about the reviews. The community association management industry is a very brutal industry when it comes to reviews. You guys get reviewed basically on rules that you don't make, just rules that you're enforcing. And so it's incredibly challenging to have a 3.5 star review. I'd say the average for a management company is between 2.5 and 3 stars. So, but I do work with some companies that are above 4 stars, and there are some tips and tricks to help with that. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Um, and then next is lack of service keywords in the descriptions. And so that is super important to make sure that you are using descriptions on your services, and also making sure that you have keywords in those descriptions as well. And then also making sure that you're tracking your visibility and your results. And so visibility would be, is the profile actually showing up when someone searches for it? And results would be, what is happening? Like, are there views? Are there calls? Are there website clicks? So what kind of results is the profile actually getting? And so keeping an eye on that is super important. So I've got a few screenshots here. Realize they're not super big, but this is just to kind of give you an example. So I live in Milwaukee area, and I've laid out 4 different searches, and they're nearly identical in nature. But as I did these searches, I received 4 very different results, and so I just wanted to kind of demonstrate this to show you that that your customers will be seeing different things when they search Google for your services. Um, and it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just to make you aware that there is different search results, and things could look completely different. And so having the online presence that will put the best light on your business, regardless of the type of search that shows up. And this is all at Google's discretion. So we don't know when and how. I could do the exact same search in 2 different cities, and one city might show the results one way, and another city might show it differently. So this particular search that I did here was for Milwaukee HOA management. And this shows what I would call like your traditional map pack. So those 3 listings there are Google business profiles, and they're showing them at the very top of the screen. And so this is probably a more traditional look. This is what we used to see more often. It has shifted, but this search was done in the last few weeks, so it does still exist in many markets and for many search terms. This next result here, Google has been using what's called AI overviews for about the last year. And this was really their first attempt at dipping their toes into the world of AI. And so basically, I searched Milwaukee Community Association Management, which isn't much different than Milwaukee HOA Management, but I got a very different look and feel. And so having an optimized Google business profile will influence this result. And so basically Google's goal with AI overviews is to give you information without needing to click on a website. And so it's very common when you ask a question, but it also shows up just in general searches as well. So it just lists some companies with links to their website. And then oftentimes it'll also put references to some of the sites on the right hand side as well. And then underneath it, we have like traditional organic results. So this next one is probably more of a traditional organic result where we're not actually seeing the map section. In this case, I didn't have enough room to include it. The map section is further down the page. So maps is still very important for this type of result as well. One thing to note here is that there's a people also ask section, which a lot of people do have questions that they ask Google, and Google knows that, so they provide the answers to questions, the most commonly asked questions in the results. And so having FAQs on your website will help you show up in these results. That's not the topic that we're discussing today, but I just wanted to kind of point that out that this is also a common result where the map section will be lower on the page. And this one right here is kind of a hybrid. So about 2 months ago, I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but in the upper left underneath the URL bar, there's something called AI mode. And I believe it's rolled out to everyone now. They were slowly rolling it out over time, but now I believe it's rolled out to everyone. So AI mode is their attempt at giving some competition to ChatGPT. So this result is very similar to what you would see for ChatGPT. And what I'm hearing is that they're going to start including these types of results more and more on the traditional search page. So right now, when you do a search, you're able to see this, but you have to click a separate link to go into AI mode. And so the significance of this is that the pictures at the bottom are from companies' Google business profiles. And so the Google business profiles are powering these results, where in a AI search like ChatGPT, the results are not powered from Google business profiles. They're powered from their own crawl of the internet. They also have a relationship with Bing. So Bing has a version of a Google business profile. It's called Bing Places. That's becoming more and more important. So we're not going to dive into that today, but I just wanted to show that this is probably what's coming in the near future for search results, and that Google is so heavily invested in the Google business profile that they're using the Google business profiles to power these results. And so at the end of the presentation, we're actually going to do another webinar at the end of August, specifically about AI search, and to teach you how you can show up in those and dominate your local market for AI search as it's becoming more and more important. So I just pulled a couple of random management companies that are not too far from me. And so I'll just point out some things here, and then I'll show you an optimized version, and then we'll go through section by section to talk about how to optimize your profile. So just to give them, not picking on this company, I just happened to find it, but I just put arrows to the things that I noticed on this one. So they only have 2 reviews, and it's a 3 out of 5, which is probably average for the industry, but you definitely want to get more reviews. So that's one thing they could do. Their address, they don't have their full address. They just have their street, city, state, and zip. And then they don't have their business hours included. And there was an update within Google recently that having your business hours displayed will help you show up in results, especially during the hours that you're open. So not having your hours definitely hurts them. And here is an example of an optimized profile where they have more photos, a nice photo of the city, and then they have 477 reviews, 4.6 star rating. They have their full address, and then they also are using an appointment link as well. So appointment links are something that you can add, and it can be anything from a scheduling system that you have access to, or it could be just your contact page on your website is considered an appointment link. So I've got a lot of information on the screen here, but I want to explain it. So there is what's called primary categories. So when you log into your Google Business Profile, categories is one of the first items that you have access to. The primary category for everyone in this industry will be property management company. And I recognize that this probably, if you're in the community association management industry, that's probably not the best fit to describe your business, as there is, another industry called the property management industry, and there's oftentimes confusion around that. Um, but unfortunately, that is the closest match in our industry. So we do have to use property management company. And it's important that that is the primary category. The primary category, which is the one listed first in your categories, is the one that matters most. Google cares about that category. Um, any other categories that are added after that, it doesn't matter what order they're in, but the first one is the most important, and how Google will use that information to help categorize your business appropriately. So you want to make sure that your primary category is property management company. And then the secondary categories, I listed some that should be included, and this is taken right from our SOP that we use for our clients. So I just wanted to share the information with everyone so that you have a better chance of being able to optimize your profile. So the secondary categories, and again, I recognize when you look at this list, you're probably thinking that doesn't fit what we do, and I totally get it. I absolutely get it. But the good thing is in a screenshot or two, in a slide or two later, I'll show you sort of what we can do to these to kind of make them to differentiate, a townhouse complex from the services that you're providing for townhouses. So unfortunately, there just really isn't great categories to fit our industry. So if you were to leave these off, you would end up ranking lower than if you add them, right? So we're adding them, but then we're going to clarify what it is that we do for each of these types of categories. So so there's townhouse complex, condominium complex, association, organization, and then homeowners association. And just one other clarification. So the only one that anyone will see publicly is the first one. So some of these other ones, I realize they're not like a perfect fit to what you guys do, but they will not be seen by anyone. It'll only be seen by you. They just help you show up in search results. So we really want to put those in there so that you show up for as many searches as possible. And then these secondary categories are unique to what types of communities you serve. So if you serve high-rise buildings, then you're going to want to put the high-rise building category in. If you serve 55 plus communities, you'll want to put the senior citizen or retirement community. If you do commercial property management, you'll want to do commercial real estate agency. If you do financial services as a standalone offering, you'll want to do financial consultant. If you offer leasing services, you'll want to put in leasing service. And then if you do any sort of additional real estate services like sale assistance, those types of things, you can put in real estate consultant. And so when you log into the back end of your profile, which the login for your profile, I'll actually just type it into the chat right now, in case anyone isn't familiar with how to log in. So it's business.google.com. And what you'll be able to see here is when you go into the categories, you'll see you'll be able to add categories in here, like the ones that I just mentioned on the previous screen. And so the first one, they do mark it for you as primary so that you're aware. And like I mentioned, the order of the remaining ones isn't important. Those can be in any order. Um, so this is the services section was something that was added about 3 or 4 years ago. Um, and so for each of your categories, so for each one of these categories listed, each one of those categories there, you're able to add services. And so you probably provide nearly identical services to each one of those categories, and so you can add you can add completely duplicated services and descriptions. So what we have here, for example, the underlying community association management, that is considered a service, and then the sentence that's written underneath there is the description. And so these are super important. There's been some studies that show that these do impact your rankings. And so depending on what keywords you use there and what services you're describing, it will help your profile show up much better in Google. And this is kind of like a hidden, like a truly hidden field. Um, because when you're on a desktop device, you can't see these. So you have no idea what you or your competitors have listed for this. But if you use your mobile device and you Google someone's name, so you get a branded result, so you get their Google business profile to come up, there is a link to their services where you'll be able to see the list of their services and then also their descriptions as well. So if you're kind of like just doing some competitor research, you can do that to see what they have listed. And like I said, the vast majority, probably 60 to 70% of the companies probably don't have either of these fields filled in. With the one caveat is that Google likes to automatically add things in. And so I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but you really want to keep an eye on these because Google will auto add, and they basically say it could be taken from other websites they've seen, from your website, from user generated content. And so they're just randomly pulling in information, automatically updating it. And I've seen some very odd things added to people's profiles. So just to give an example, if you're hiring for, a position at your company and you mentioned that like an HR administrator will be hiring for this position, they may list you as an HR company, and it's very odd because that's not what you are. You don't want to start showing up for HR company type results, because it could actually hurt. If Google doesn't understand what you do, they could start showing you for other results and weaken the results for your primary services. The same is true of some of the services that you may provide. So if you coordinate maintenance and you help people with painting, they might list you as a painter. So if there's any reference to that on your website or on a third-party site, they may list you as a painter. And so you want to make sure you go through there and check on these. Monthly is probably a good cadence. But these are just examples of services and descriptions that you could use. You can certainly write your own as well, but basically you're trying to put in the keywords of the services that board members may search for when doing a search for a management company. Here's some additional services and descriptions that can be used. And so behind the scenes, when you go into your Google business profile by going to business.google.com and you go to services, this is what you'll see. So the items that I had listed on the previous two screens, this is how it'll actually look in your Google business profile. So for each of your categories, you'll have the ability to add services and descriptions, and that's what's shown on this screen here. All right, so we're going to talk about reviews. And like I said, community association management industry is very challenging for reviews. People are at least 20 times more likely to complain than they are to compliment. But reviews are important for many reasons. So we'll just go through this here. So 87% of consumers read online reviews for local businesses. And HOA boards often will Google and look at your reviews before reaching out, even when it's a referral. So there's that. And I'll just talk a little bit about reviews and how to handle them. So I've had a few clients tell me like, oh, we're just not going to respond. We don't want to admit to the things that are being said about us, or can we just, kill our Google business profile? We don't want anybody seeing those reviews. And I always tell them, I encourage them that that isn't the right approach for a few reasons. Your industry is your competitors are in the same boat. They are getting the negative reviews naturally, and anybody who has 4-star or above rating, it's not because they're this wonderful, phenomenal company that doesn't do anything wrong ever. It's because they have a plan in place to get good, positive reviews. And so by that I mean that they have their managers asking people who are satisfied with their service. So whether that be a board member, a homeowner, a vendor, when they have done something that earned their trust or they're happy with their results, they ask them at that time, would you mind leaving us a review on Google? And so that's how people are able to get the positive reviews. The negative ones are going to come in naturally. There's nothing you can do about that. But I would encourage you to respond to reviews, whether they're positive or negative. And it's best to make sure that the person responding wasn't the person personally involved if it was a negative situation. Um, because when you write a review response, especially to a negative review, you're not writing the response for the person who left the negative review. You're writing it for the next person who's reading your reviews to see how you handle it. There's no business in the world that's 100% perfect 100% of the time, and especially in this industry. So, what board members are looking for is okay, so they had some problems, so did all of their competitors. How did they respond? And so, it's taking accountability where necessary. It's apologizing if that's appropriate in the situation, and admitting that we're going to get better. Thank you for your feedback. We appreciate what you've said. We're going to take a look into it. Just being cordial about it and moving on, right? Because you're not writing it to the person that you upset. You're writing it to the next person who wanted to see how you handled this situation because they know that there will be problems in their community and how do you handle it, right? You definitely don't want to blame people. You don't. I mean, you can if there's something that they're just legitimately wrong about, you can correct the facts, but you don't want to go too deep into that because people will read into that too much. And Google reviews do impact your rankings, especially with your Google business profile. And so the quantity, so the number of reviews you get, the quality, so how many stars you get, and the freshness, so how recent are your reviews, all matter in your rankings, right? And so there are some companies that can really get on the ball for getting positive reviews, and that alone can help them increase their rankings and their visibility in Google, and that is super beneficial. Um, Also, keywords in your reviews. So that one, if you have somebody that you have a good relationship, you can definitely coach them in what they could write. Would you mind writing us a Google review and make sure to mention that you're a board member, or make sure to mention that we manage your HOA community so that you don't want to go too far with it. But if you just tell them, just give them a little bit of coaching, they'll probably write them anyway. They'll probably write a description of what you did and how you helped them anyways, but a little bit of coaching helps to get those keywords in your reviews. Yeah, and so yeah, just to reiterate, responding to the reviews is the right way to go, whether positive or negative, in a relatively quick manner. I'd say within a couple of days for sure. um, and just to make sure that any sort of problems you have are addressed in a respectful manner. And here's some pro tips. So these first two here right now are best practices. There is some rumors going around that they may be discontinued by Google. So I don't know. I don't know for sure, but there is a section called FAQs, and Google is totally fine with a business seeding their own questions and then answering them themselves. So you don't need to write a ton of these, but maybe 5 of your most frequently asked questions. When if you talk to the person who writes your proposals and you say, what are the top questions that board members ask of us, you can write those questions out and then answer them so that people coming can see that information and it gets some traction to your profile. And the same goes for Google posts. So if you blog on a regular basis, you can easily add those to your profile. If you don't, you can. So it's kind of like Google's version of like a social media. They allow you to post any sort of like updates. They allow you to post events, things like that. Blogs is usually probably the most common use of that, where you can add a link to the blog post and send it to your website. You can also include a photo. So if you're using photos on your blogs, you can include that photo and then push them to the blog posts. Um, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but one of the best practices is to check your profile monthly, as Google auto updates various parts and doesn't tell you. So when you log in, you will see what they updated, but they don't send you an email saying, hey, we updated these things. So it is good to log in monthly so that you can see what has been done. And then if there's anything that was done incorrectly or doesn't represent your business the best, you'll be able to fix it right then. Also, slowly adding photos over time is helpful. And then there's a performance section when you log in that shows you how many people are viewing and interacting with your profile. And I will show you that in just a moment. So I included a monthly maintenance checklist, and this is best. This is what I would recommend doing on a monthly basis. So checking your categories, making sure that something wasn't switched, making sure that you're reviewing your responses, or I'm sorry, responding to all your reviews, and those should be done in more real time. By default, when you have access to your Google Business profile, they do send you emails every time a new review comes in, so those you'll get emails on. You can post or do blog updates. Double check the service section. That is the section that is notorious for having automatic updates. And then the Q&A updates, you can post maybe a new question each month. And then also the Google Business Profile Insights report is something you should be looking at on a monthly basis. And so I just took some screenshots here of the different items that were included in the performance section. So when you go to performance in the Google Business Profile dashboard, this screen right here shows a 30-day view of the total number of interactions with the profile. And this screenshot is for a management company. There's also as you can, it's probably small, but there's some tabs across the top here. So there's calls. It shows you how many calls were made. And so this is actually underreported. So Google is only able to track calls from mobile devices. When somebody clicks on the link to call your phone number, they don't have a way of tracking desktop devices. So these are calls from mobile. And then I didn't include bookings or directions. Most people don't have the bookings tab set up. You have to use a third-party software for that. And there's no industry software that is set up with Google to track bookings. And then the directions, I don't think that really gives us an accurate account of anything. But website clicks is important to know how many people actually went to your website from your Google Business Profile. And so that is also reported in the performance section of the Google Business Profile. And we are going to, if anybody wants me to take a look at their Google Business Profile and give them some suggestions, I'm offering a free Google Business Profile analysis. You can just schedule a call with me, and we will put a link to that up on the screen so that anybody can just click the button there and schedule their analysis. Also, we are going to be doing a webinar on Tuesday, August 26th at 2 p.m. Eastern. That will be all about AI search. And that's, so how can CAM companies win more HOA leads through AI search? So I just have a little bit more information on that. I think what's really great is that this is just coming to light now, and probably a lot of your competitors aren't paying attention to this yet. So this is a great time to get involved. And so specifically, we'll be talking about ChatGPT and the Google AI mode that I had a screenshot to in this presentation. And we'll talk about some other large language models as well. So AI search is only about 1% right now, but it's going to be increasing rapidly. So we're just going to talk about the strategies for this next generation of search and how to get your website showing up in the search. And then basically, how do you get your your company ahead of the competitors in search as well. And all right, so if anyone has any questions, please type them into the chat and I will answer them. And Brianna, do you have any questions that came in?
Yes, there were a couple participants who couldn't make it to the meeting today, so they emailed us our questions. So I'm going to go ahead and bring those up. So the first question is, what's the easiest thing we can do this week to improve visibility?
So, good question. The easiest things that will improve visibility would be to make sure that your categories are correct and to make sure your services and descriptions are filled in. And with many things in SEO, they take a very long time to show results. But thankfully, for those items that I just mentioned, they will show you results very quickly, usually as soon as the next day. When you add new categories, if you add new services and add descriptions, you will see the results most likely the next day. So that is the one item. If you only had time to focus on one item or two items, those would be the two that I would recommend optimizing.
Okay, great. Another question someone asked, how do we get board members to leave reviews?
Oh, that's a great question. So I touched on that a little bit. I would recommend the managers who work directly with them would be the ones they probably, if you talk to them about this, they probably know off the top of their head some of the board members who they could immediately ask for reviews. Um, and so the best way to do it is in person. If you're not meeting in person always, on the phone is a great way. Email also works. I think in person it's harder to say no to somebody if you ask them like, hey, can you Google our name and leave us a review? That's the best way because they'll usually just do it right then and there. Over the phone is good because they can hear directly from you. Email's also good. Probably not the best choice because we all get so many emails each day that the majority of them aren't read and they're just deleted. So the best way is to just ask. And then as you help board members out with their problems and they're happy with your company, that is a great time to ask as well.
Okay, thank you so much. And we have one more question. Will AI search replace Google Maps or the 3-pack?
Oh, that's a good question. I wish I had a crystal ball. So what I've heard at this point is that they are going to start integrating the AI mode that I had put a screenshot up there. They are going to start integrating that into their main search page slowly. And I would say my guess would be depending on how the visitors and how the consumers receive it, whether it's helpful and whether it actually helps them with their search, will determine how far they go with it. They're definitely Google is in uncharted territory, so they previously had 95% market share for search and didn't really have any strong competition. And so this is the first time where we have tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and others who are giving them a run for their money. So they're definitely coming up with similar type tools. They are positioned well to compete in that arena because they already have so much of the search volume. People are coming to them naturally because they have for years and years and years. And so it makes sense for them to do what they're doing. At this point, they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Google Business Profile and Google Maps. So at this point, all their AI innovations have included Google Maps. So as far as we can tell, and they continue to enhance the Google Maps and Google Business Profile program. So as far as we can tell, that will continue to be important and will continue to play a role in rankings going forward. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, doesn't look like anyone else does. Well, thank you all so much for your time. And if you would like me to take a look at your profile, you can click on the link. I also have on this last slide here, have my email and phone number. If anyone has any questions, be happy to answer them for you. And thank you so much for your time. And you will be getting this recording shortly after the call. Thank you.